She was 68 years old. She had never once asked anyone for anything she hadn't earned. And in the middle of a marble-floored waiting room on Bloor Street West, a woman in a sand-colored cashmere coat pointed at her like she was something the cleaning staff had missed and said, loud enough for the whole room to hear, "I don't know who approved this, but someone needs to deal with it right now." The old woman's name was Ujunwa Chukwu. Her family called her Mama Uju. She was sitting in a cream leather chair in the VIP guest lounge of Northgate Concierge Medical Center, one of Toronto's most exclusive private clinics, the kind of place where an annual membership cost more than most people's rent, and the waiting rooms smelled like cedar and quiet money. She was wearing a deep indigo Iro wrapper and a matching booba blouse, with a head tie folded flat across the crown of her head. Her sandals were flat and soft with age. In her lap she held a sealed clay pot wrapped in a faded kanga cloth, knotted at the top with a careful double bow. Inside the pot was of akwu, palm nut soup, simmered since 4 that morning the way her late husband used to love it, dried fish, crayfish she ground herself, because the packaged kind never tasted right. She had made it for her son. He had been in surgery since 6 o'clock. The woman in the cashmere coat didn't know any of that. She didn't ask. Her name was Lavinia Thorpe. She was 43 years old, tall and angular, hair pressed into a sleek knot at the base of her neck, pearl earrings, nails done in pale blush. She had a lifestyle account on Instagram with 94,000 followers. Her husband, Richard, was a senior partner at a Bay Street investment firm and paid $27,000 a year for 2 Northgate memberships, his and hers. Lavinia came in every 6 weeks for vitamin infusions and what the clinic called a longevity assessment. She knew the names of all the receptionists the way a person knows the name of someone who parks their car. She had spotted Mama Uju the moment she walked through the frosted glass doors. She had taken one look, the wrapper, the head tie, the clay pot, and pressed her lips together. By the time she reached the front desk, she was already composing the complaint in her head. The person behind the front desk was Ozioma Eze. Ozioma was 29 years old. She was the kind of person who had made peace, quietly and without drama, with a life that had not gone the way she planned. She had come to Toronto from Enugu at 17 with her mother, Ngozi, who had spent everything they had on 2 one-way tickets and a cousin's couch in Scarborough. Ngozi got a job cleaning rooms at the Sheraton Center downtown. Early shifts, long shifts, 6 days a week, with the particular cheerfulness of a woman who understood exactly what she was working toward. Ozioma had been accepted to the University of Toronto's social work program. She had a scholarship, she had a plan. Then Ngozi got sick. Lupus. The diagnosis came in Ozioma's 2nd year. Not the manageable kind, the kind that made stairs difficult and paychecks impossible. Ozioma took a leave of absence. The leave became a withdrawal. The withdrawal became a job at a dental office, then a physiotherapy clinic, then this job at Northgate, where the benefits were good and she told herself every year that next year, when things settled, she would go back. She had $94 in her checking account. Her next direct deposit was in 6 days. She had a rice cooker, a box of lentils, and a photo of her mother on the kitchen counter that she looked at every morning before she left for work. But Ozioma didn't carry her circumstances like a weight. She carried them like a tool, something she'd learned to use. She greeted every patient by name. She remembered birthdays. She had brought Mama Uju a glass of water without being asked because she noticed the old woman's lips were dry. She had said, "Just water for now, Auntie, your son's almost done. 1 more hour." Mama Uju had smiled at her. "Thank you, my daughter. You have your mother's eyes." Ozioma had blinked. She had never met this woman before in her life, but something about the way Mama Uju said it, like a fact, like the weather, made her chest catch. That was 20 minutes before Lavinia Thorpe walked in. "Excuse me." Lavinia set her handbag on the counter with the ease of someone who considered every surface hers by default. "I need to speak with whoever is responsible for the guest lounge." "That would be me," Ozioma said. "Is everything all right, Miss Thorpe?" Lavinia tilted her head toward Mama Uju. "That woman, who let her in?" "She's a guest of Dr. Chukwu. He signed a lounge pass for her this morning." Dr. Chukwu. She repeated it as though testing whether it sounded right. She's his, what, his cleaner? Ozioma paused 1 second, just one. She's his mother. Lavinia looked at Mama Uju the way a person looks at a spill on an expensive rug. Well, regardless, the lounge is for members and their approved guests. Not for, she lowered her voice just slightly, this. She is an approved guest, Miss Thorpe. And the smell? Whatever she's brought in there. I can detect it from the other side of the room. This is a medical facility. Said it like medical facility was a rank Mama Uju had failed to achieve. Not a market. In her chair across the room, Mama Uju sat very still. Her hands tightened around the clay pot. She did not look at Lavinia. She looked at the pale winter light coming through the floor-to-ceiling window, at the bare branches of the oak tree outside, at the way the light made the bark look almost warm. She had survived harder things than this. She had survived widowhood at 51, when her husband Chukwudi died of a stroke in Onitsha 3 days before he was supposed to fly back to Toronto. She had survived 18 years of cleaning hotel rooms on her feet from 5 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, and then taking the 54 Lawrence bus home to Scarborough to cook dinner and help with homework, and make sure her son had everything he needed for the following day. She had survived every small and large indignity that comes with being an immigrant woman in a country that does not always make space for you to simply exist. A woman in a cashmere coat was not going to be the thing that broke her. But Lavinia wasn't finished. She lowered her voice to the register that certain people use when they want to sound reasonable while being entirely unreasonable. My husband and I are considering the executive membership tier. $22,000 annually. But if the standard of the lounge is what I'm seeing right now, I'm going to have serious questions about whether Northgate is still the right fit for our family. She held Ozioma's gaze. Do you understand what I'm saying? I understand, Miss Thorpe. Good, then I'd like her moved, or the food removed, one or the other. I'm not able to remove a guest with a valid pass who has done nothing wrong. Lavinia's jaw tightened. Then get me the clinic director. The director is in a consultation until. Get me whoever is in charge right now. Ozioma reached for the phone on her desk. And from across the room in that cream leather chair, Mama Uju spoke. Her voice was not loud, it was the kind that doesn't need to be. Ma, she looked at Lavinia steadily. I can hear you. Lavinia turned. I know what you smell, Mama Uju continued. That is off akwu. Palm nut soup. I started it at 4 this morning because my son has been standing in an operating room since 6 and he has not eaten. She looked down at the clay pot. He is cutting offam right now to save their life. The least I can do is make sure there is something warm waiting when he comes out. The man in the corner chair had set his magazine down. Lavinia said, That's very nice, but this isn't the appropriate. I know what kind of place this is, Mama Uju said quietly. I have been sitting in places like this for 20 years, waiting for my son. I am very good at waiting. She looked at Lavinia. I am not good at pretending I am not here. The room held its breath. Now, before I tell you what happened next, if you have never subscribed to Ancient African Folktales, this is the moment. Because what's coming in this story, the payback, the truth that walks through that door, it is the kind that stays with you long after the screen goes dark. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and hiss come back, because every tale has a lesson. And Ancient African Folktales never forgets. Lavinia sat down in the chair farthest from Mama Uju. She opened her phone and composed an email to the clinic director, careful and cold, including Ozioma's full name from the name badge, and recommending that administration review its staff's understanding of appropriate guest management standards. She sent it at 11:47 a.m. She didn't know that email would be the first domino in a very long row. At 11:52, the surgical suite doors on the 4th floor opened. Dr. Ujunwa Chukwu was 44 years old. He was the head of cardiothoracic surgery at Northgate Medical and held a joint appointment at the University of Toronto. He had performed over 3,000 surgeries across a career that had started with a Greyhound bus from Toronto to Kingston and a scholarship to Queen's, continued through a residency at Toronto General and a fellowship at the Cleveland Clinic, that his colleagues recognized, and his patients never forgot. He had the kind of authority that doesn't come from a title but from being the calmest person in every room that has ever needed calm. He was still in his surgical scrubs when the ward nurse caught him in the corridor. "Dr. Chukwu, your mother is downstairs. There's been a complaint." He stopped walking. "About her?" "About the food she brought. One of the members was," the nurse paused. She was quite insistent. He was already moving toward the elevator. When the doors opened on the ground floor, Ikenna did not scan the room. He did not look for Lavinia or assess the situation or compose himself. He walked straight to his mother. He crossed the lounge in 8 steps and crouched down in front of her chair, still in his scrubs, surgical cap pushed back on his head, and took both her hands in his. "Mama, how long have you been sitting here?" Mama Uju looked at him the way mothers look at their children when the children are worried, as though the worry itself is the thing that needs reassuring. "Not long," she said. "You know me." "Did you eat?" "I brought food for you, not for me." He squeezed her hands. "Mama." "I'm fine, Ikenna." And then the small private smile she kept only for him. "Your soup is getting cold." He stood up slowly. He turned and faced the room. Everyone in the lounge was watching. The man with the magazine had set it face down. The couple near the window had turned in their chairs. Ozioma stood at the desk with her hands flat on the counter. Lavinia sat rigidly in the far chair, her phone no longer useful to her. Ikenna looked at all of them and then he spoke. "My name is Dr. Ujunwa Chukwu. I've been your physician today, or the physician of someone you love. I want to introduce you to someone." He gestured toward his mother. "This is Ujunwa Chukwu. She came to Toronto from Anambra State, Nigeria in 1999. She was 41 years old. She arrived with 2 suitcases, $800 in cash, and a son who needed to finish high school." He paused, and the pause was not for effect. It was because the next part still cost him something to say out loud. She got a job cleaning rooms at the Sheraton Center. She worked there for 18 years. Morning shifts. She took the 54 Lawrence bus in the dark so she could be home by the time I finished school. No one in the room moved. My father died in 2006. He never saw me graduate, but my mother was there, front row, in a headtie she had ironed 3 times because she wanted it to look right. She sat in the parking lot of Queen's University in a borrowed car and ate rice from a Tupperware container during the ceremony dinner because she couldn't afford the ticket. She clapped so loud the people outside the building could hear her through the walls. The woman near the window pressed her hand over her mouth. "I understand someone in this room had a problem with my mother today. With her clothes, with the food she brought, with the idea that she didn't belong here." He turned and looked directly at Lavinia. Lavinia, who had gone still in a way that was different from everyone else's stillness. "My mother belongs here. She belongs here because I am here, and I am here because she made me possible. Every surgery I have performed in this building, every life extended, every family that left together instead of apart, it started with a woman who cleaned other people's rooms so her son could sleep in his own." He let that sit. "There's something else." He looked at Mama Uju. She shook her head once, very slightly. The particular way she had always shaken it when she thought he was about to make too much of her. "Mama. Ikenna, it is enough." "It is not enough." He turned back to the room. "For 15 years, my mother has been sending money back to Anambra. Not large amounts, sometimes $50, sometimes $30. She kept a separate account. She called it the village account. Every time she had something extra, it went in." He paused. 3 years ago, the Chukwu Family Foundation, which my mother started, not me, funded the construction of a primary health post in Ninewi, then a second in Awka, then a third. And last year, the foundation contributed $300,000 to the capital campaign for this building. Someone gasped. Lavinia's phone was in her lap. It had become an object with no function. "You asked who let her in." Ikenna's voice was not raised. It was the opposite of raised. It was the kind of voice that fills a room precisely because it does not try to. "The answer is, this building exists, in part because she helped build it. With money, she made cleaning rooms, with $30 at a time in an account she called the village account." He looked at Lavinia for one long, even moment. She doesn't need anyone's permission to sit in this room. She earned her seat the same way I earned mine, with her hands and with years, and with the kind of love that does not announce itself. The man in the corner stood up and began to clap. Then the woman near the window, then the couple, then the nurse from the 4th floor who had come down and was standing near the elevator with her arms folded and her eyes wet. Ozioma at the front desk did not clap. She couldn't. Her hands were pressed flat on the counter because her legs had gone unsteady and she needed something solid to hold. Because all she could see, in the middle of that marble room, was her own mother. Ngozi, in the dark on the 54 Lawrence. Ngozi with her housekeeping cart in a corridor that smelled like bleach. Ngozi, who packed her a lunch every morning at 5 and sent her out the door with the same phrase her own mother had given her. The pot that cooks the meal is never the one that eats alone. Ozioma looked at the ceiling. She breathed. Across the room, Mama Uju was watching her. When their eyes met, Mama Uju gave a single nod, small, unhurried, certain, like she had already seen in Ozioma something Ozioma hadn't let herself look at directly yet. Lavinia Thorpe left the clinic at 12:03 p.m. without her vitamin infusion. Her husband Richard had been in a consultation room on the 2nd floor. A patient in the waiting room had already texted him a description of what happened. He read it twice in the elevator. He didn't say anything to Lavinia in the lobby. He said something when they reached the car. It was not long, and it was not gentle, and it was the kind of sentence that doesn't fully arrive in the moment but rings in your ears for weeks. Someone in the lounge had recorded the whole thing on their phone, shaky footage, ceiling light catching Ikenna's surgical cap, Mama Uju's head tie perfectly still in the frame. By the following morning, it had been shared 40,000 times with a single caption. He knelt in his scrubs and said, "Mama and I have been crying for an hour." The comments filled up differently than comments usually do. A woman in Brampton wrote that her mother had worked the same shifts at the same Sheraton, and she was calling her right now. A man in Mississauga wrote that he had once been embarrassed to let his mother speak Igbo in public and had never forgiven himself for it. A nurse in Edmonton wrote that she had almost quit her program 3 times, and her mother had driven 6 hours from Winnipeg every time, just to sit with her until she decided to stay. Lavinia's Instagram went private before noon. Richard canceled the executive tier application. The clinic director sent Mama Uju a formal letter of apology, hand-delivered with a gift card to a Nigerian restaurant on Eglinton Avenue West. Mama Uju accepted it politely and gave it to Ozioma the next morning. "You like jollof rice, my daughter?" "Auntie, I live for jollof rice." "Go, take your mother." 2 days after the video circulated, Ozioma received a call from Dr. Ikenna's executive assistant. "The doctor would like to meet with you at your convenience," the assistant said. "It has nothing to do with your employment." He was very clear about that. He would like to speak with you personally. His office was a small room for a man of his standing. A desk, 2 chairs, a window over the courtyard, no plaques on the walls. One framed photo on the desk, a woman in a headtie, laughing at something outside the frame. "My mother told me about you," Ikenna said. "She said you brought her water without being asked. She called you by name. She said, 'The girl Ozioma.' She said you have your mother's eyes." Ozioma looked at her hands. It wasn't anything special. It was the only kind thing anyone did for her that day. She didn't answer. "She also mentioned you were supposed to be in school." "I'm going back," Ozioma said, "when things settle." Ikenna nodded slowly. "My mother used to say that, when things settle. She said it for 11 years. He paused. "Things don't settle, Ms. E. You settle them." He slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was a letter of recommendation for the University of Toronto's School of Social Work, signed by Dr. Ujunwa Chukwu, and a second letter on Chukwu Family Foundation letterhead, confirming a full 2-year bursary, renewable, for a student demonstrating financial need and demonstrated commitment to community. Ozioma stared at both letters for a long time. "You don't have to take it," Ikenna said, "but my mother asked me to do this, and I have learned in 44 years that when my mother asks me something, there is a reason I don't yet fully understand." Ozioma covered her face with both hands. She cried the way you cry when someone lifts something you had stopped noticing was heavy. Not with relief exactly, but with the sudden awareness of how long you had been carrying it alone. On a Sunday morning in late March, Lavinia Thorpe rang the doorbell of a house in North York. She was not wearing the cashmere coat. She had on a plain gray jacket, dark jeans, no jewelry except a small gold cross she'd worn since she was a girl in Accra. No makeup. The circles under her eyes were real, and she had stopped trying to hide them. Mama Uju answered the door. She looked at Lavinia for a long moment, then she stepped aside and said, "Come in, I just made Ofe Akwu." They sat at the kitchen table. Mama Uju placed a bowl in front of Lavinia, the same palm nut soup that Lavinia had called a smell. She wrapped both hands around it and did not speak for a moment. "My mother sells waki," Lavinia finally said. "From a cart near Kwame Nkrumah Circle in Accra. She has sold from the same spot for 26 years. She looked up. "I haven't been back in 11 years. I told people here that my family was from East Legan, the nice part of the city." A small, bleak pause. "I told them she was a catering entrepreneur." Mama Uju said nothing. She refilled Lavinia's water. "I saw you sitting in that chair and I felt—" Lavinia stopped, started again. "I felt embarrassed, not of you, of myself, of the version of me that looked at you and wanted you to disappear, because I knew, I could see exactly who you were. I grew up surrounded by women like you. I was raised by one." Her voice went almost to nothing, "and I still looked at you like that." Mama Uju reached across the table and put her hand over Lavinia's. "Eat," she said, "the soup is getting cold." Lavinia laughed once, a short, broken sound, then she picked up the spoon. "Call your mother after," Mama Uju said. "Mrs. Chukwu, I came here to apologize to you." "You can apologize to me by calling your mother. That is enough for me." Lavinia's hands were shaking. She put the spoon down. She picked up her phone. She dialed. It rang twice. Then Lavi, a woman's voice, old, warm, startled into hope. "Is that you? I still have your number. I never deleted it, Mama Uju stood up quietly. She walked to the stove and began warming more soup. She gave the woman her privacy. Because that is who Ujunwa Chukwu was. She did not need an apology made to herself. She needed Lavinia to remember who she had been before she decided that forgetting was the same thing as becoming someone better. Some lessons do not arrive like corrections. They arrive like a bowl of palm nut soup, set in front of you without ceremony by someone who owes you absolutely nothing, in a kitchen that smells like the home you almost let yourself forget. Ozioma enrolled at U of T that September. Ngozi, whose treatment costs had been quietly covered through a third party that took Ozioma 3 weeks to trace back to its source, came to orientation and sat beside her in a lecture hall on St. George Street. She looked around the room with the expression of a woman watching something she had pictured for a long time finally take shape in the real world. "Mama," Ozioma said, "stop crying. People will see." "Let them see," Ngozi said at full volume. "My daughter is going to be a social worker. What am I supposed to do? Be calm? Is that what you want from me? Calm?" Ozioma laughed so hard she had to press her face into her sleeve. On the last day of Ozioma's first year, a card arrived in the mail, handwritten on plain white paper, in careful English with letters that leaned slightly to one side. "My daughter," it read. "My husband Chukwudi used to say, 'The pot that cooks the meal is never the one that eats alone.' I have been thinking about what he meant. I think he meant that when you give everything to make something good, you do not lose the meal. You become part of it. You are in everything that comes after. Keep going, Ozioma. We see you. Mama Uju." She framed it. She hung it above her desk. And every morning, before she opened her laptop, before she read the day's assignments, before the world with all its noise had a chance to find her, she looked at it and remembered a woman in a deep indigo wrapper, sitting in a cream leather chair on Bloor Street, holding a clay pot of palm nut soup with both hands. Unbothered, unbroken, completely, quietly, entirely herself.